Hello and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today I'll be showing you how to cycle from Woodford in the far northeast of London to Stratford in East London. This ride takes about 35 minutes and you can do the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. By public transport, the same journey takes around half an hour, so cycling is a perfectly competitive way to make this journey. If you find this video useful or you just enjoy watching it, then please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as I try to post new videos just like it every week. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to everybody who supports the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to contribute too, then you can find a link in the description below the video. Alright, let's get going. So we're starting on Harrow Road, Woodford Green, and we're going to turn straight down Derby Road. Derby Road is closed at the far end, so is generally pretty quiet, but unfortunately working against that is the large car park that we just passed on the right, so you will sometimes see cars like that one driving down here to access the car park. However, once you do get past this junction and these no through route signs, it should be nice and serene. One thing I like about this street is the number of different architectural styles along here. You get everything from Victorian to Edwardian to interwar and even some post-war modernist stuff further up on the left there. It's kind of a microcosm of London, and it's kind of what I like about London, that you do get so many different types of buildings. There is some room for improvement on the closure at the far end of the street. It could be made a little bit more permeable to make it easier to access this cycle track, which we're going to go on now. We had to use the drop curb there. It could be done with maybe a line of bollards and some planting instead if Redbridge Council ever wanted to improve that section there. But it's no problem. We're nicely on Woodford New Road now, and we've got these really high quality protected cycle lanes, keeping us separate from the traffic and from the pavement as well. These lanes are on both sides of the road, so in the opposite direction you'll be cycling on the other side of the road. Next up, we have to navigate the Waterworks Corner roundabout. The good news is that the paths stay nice and separate from the traffic and you don't have to interact with any cars. The bad news is that it sends you through a slightly dingy underpass, the one that we just went through, so if that's the sort of thing that bothers you, do take that into account before planning your route, especially if you're planning on doing it at night. It is also possible to lose your way here, as the loops are a bit of a maze. If you need a bit of extra help, obviously you've seen this video, but you could also download the free map of the route, which I'll link in the description below the video, and you can just download and use that on whatever app or device you choose to use. Once you get out of the paths, there's a small section on a shared pavement here, and then a couple of toucan crossings. Note the building ahead of us on the right there. That's the Thames Water Waterworks, which gives Waterworks Corner its name. Interestingly, that was actually bombed by the IRA in 1975 and 3 people were injured. Later that year, the same group that planted the bomb surrendered to police after a televised siege in Balcombe Street in Marylebone. Now, after that little interruption with the toucan crossings and the shared pavement, we're now back on a high quality cycle lane. This one's slightly different. It's a two-way cycle track, so no matter which direction you're cycling in, you'll be on this side of the road. I believe that Waltham Forest Council has plans to improve that crossing that we just went through when they do work on Forest Road, which is the street that we crossed. I don't know when that's due to be delivered, but that would be really welcome, as it's a little bit of a weak point in the route at the moment. It's perfectly safe, but just a little bit confusing to know exactly how to use it sometimes. Do make sure that you're careful as you cycle past these houses, by the way, as a lot of the front gardens have been converted into parking and those cars could back out at any second, so just keep an eye on them. It's also disappointing to see that van parked on a zebra crossing, obscuring anyone who might have been trying to cross there. Now, there's a strange oversight coming up here We don't get any traffic signals at this junction which we're just approaching, so it seems like we should just go straight on. But there is a pedestrian crossing over there and also traffic signals in the other direction, so I assume you're not meant to proceed at certain times, like when pedestrians are crossing. I don't know whether anyone watching has been there more recently and knows whether that's been fixed or not, but if not, for now, my advice is just to be really cautious as you cross that side road, both for pedestrians but also for cars who might be coming around the corner. What we have here is a much better setup for crossing the road and how you'd hope that the junction might be done back there and also at Waterworks Corner, and that is that brilliant cycle crossing that puts us straight onto Whipps Cross Road. Now, Whipps Cross Road doesn't have its own protected cycle track, but it does have this shared path. You can see the blue shared space symbol on the signs there. I've talked about this shared path a bit before, and in my view it's pretty good for a shared path. It ticks all the boxes. It has a grass verge separating it from the road, so it's not just a pavement. It has a high quality surface, which is also a slightly different colour, kind of reminding people that this isn't just any old pavement. You might see people cycling along here as well. It also has very few side roads along it, which is one of the problems with shared paths. They often don't have priority over side roads. One of the exceptions, of course, is the entrance to this car park just here, which is usually clear, but at the moment it has an SUV in it. The other good point I like about it is that the signs, like this one we just went past, are prominent and frequent, reminding people that it is a shared path, which helps prevent conflicts between people walking and cycling. Sometimes people will get angry if they see someone cycling on a shared pavement, even though it's allowed. Of course, when you're cycling in any shared space, this one's no exception. You should always cycle courteously, not too quickly, and give people plenty of space as you're going down here. In that respect though, it does also meet the last condition of a good shared path, which is that footfall is relatively low. It was quite a nice day when this was filmed and there were quite a few people out having a walk, and I think this is probably the maximum number of people that you're likely to see along here. It's never going to be completely rammed or anything like that. Now, I know that we're all here for cycling, but I know that some of us do also appreciate a good train, and there's a special treat for those of us coming up. We're actually just here passing over the central line of the London Underground, which passes below that bridge in a cutting. I do always try and mark and note whenever we go over a railway line, under a railway line, or near a railway station in these videos. Partly for fun, it's partly to see where they are, partly because it can sometimes be surprising, but partly because I think it does also help you navigate the city a bit. I think most Londoners tend to get around the city with the kind of the mental map of the tube in their head, and pointing out where tube stations and tube lines and other railway lines are kind of helps you work out where you are if you're not so familiar at viewing London through the road network, which is kind of what you have to do when you're cycling. So yeah, where are we on the tube map now? We're actually in the bottom left-hand corner of the Hainault Loop on the Central Line, that kind of bit where the Central Line goes into a bit of a loop in its far northeastern corner. Back on the bike though, we are briefly making use of these protected cycle lanes along High Road, Leytonstone, before turning off at Mornington Road. The streets in this area east of Leytonstone are all very quiet. They're effectively a natural low traffic neighbourhood, as the Onstead Flats are on one side and there isn't really a through route for cars. We'll see the occasional vehicle accessing properties, but generally you can cycle on the carriageway here, no problem. The only slightly annoying thing, as ever with most streets like this in London, is the double parking on both sides of the road, which makes the usable carriageway width really quite narrow, and it means that it can sometimes be a bit of a squeeze to get through if there is a car coming the other way. At the end of the street, dead ahead of us, there are the aforementioned Onstead Flats, and we're going to take a little path right over them here. I really like the approach that Waltham Forest has taken with the path here. It's a sealed surface, so it's never going to get muddy, and you don't need a mountain bike to ride over it. But equally, it's not just grey asphalt, and the finish blends in nicely with the slightly more rustic surroundings of the Onstead Flats. I should point out though that apart from at the entrances to the streets, there isn't any lighting along it, so just be aware of that if you're planning to use this route at night. It is only a short one though, and it does run quite near to houses, so I personally wouldn't have a problem with using it at all times of day, but I know that people have different thresholds for this sort of thing. Now, as you can see by this road closure up ahead, that path has put us into another low traffic neighbourhood, so the streets around here are all dead quiet and really pleasant for riding a bike on. No matter what your ability, you shouldn't really have any problems. One improvement that's gone in since the last time I came down this street was the introduction of a new crossing over Harrow Road just here. It's a parallel cycle crossing, so there's a zebra crossing there and then a bit for bikes alongside it, and a small shared pavement to get us to Newham Road with a drop curb down here. Harrow Road isn't particularly busy at the moment, but sometimes in rush hour it can get more busy, so it's nice for us to have that priority to get over the street when it's needed. Weirdly, I did notice that the cycle symbols were missing from the crossing when I came down here though, and I wonder if anyone who uses this more regularly has noticed whether or not they've been put in yet. On the other side of the street, in the South Leytonstone East low traffic neighbourhood, it's a similar story. The traffic levels are very low, but likewise there is a lot of on-street parking on some very narrow streets, so that when you do run into one car, it can actually block the entire road. I'd be really interested to hear in the comments what people think the solution to that is. Is it an unavoidable issue, or should councils remove parking when having too much of it on a street obstructs the flow of traffic? Some councils have started developing what they call a curbside strategy to look at other uses for the curbside, whether that's, planting, greening, wider pavements, parklets, things like that. But implementation on that has been slow so far, including in places like Lambeth, where the strategy has been very ambitious. So yeah, I'd just be interested to hear what people think of that issue. Just a reminder, by the way, that if you're enjoying the video, please do hit the like button to help other people find it. And also, if you're really enjoying it, you can hit the subscribe button, which will make sure that more videos from the channel appear on your YouTube homepage. And you could also click the bell icon next to the subscribe button, and that should send you alerts whenever a new video is posted. And once again, a huge thanks to everyone who continues to support the channel on the Patreon. Really appreciate that. It really does help keep the channel going. And if anybody else wants to join in and is feeling generous, then you can find a link to the Patreon in the description below the video. There's something interesting on this street, Cemetery Road, which I always enjoy pointing out. You see this cross hatching down here and this little crossing island. It kind of looks a bit out of place. It's the sort of thing you might see on a busier road, but this is of course a much quieter street. The reason it's much quieter is because of this closure here. This whole area has been turned into a low traffic neighbourhood, and so those other pieces of street furniture start to look a little bit anachronistic. They don't quite fit. Down the line, the council will probably remove that cross hatching next time they redo the road. They might also add some stuff. They might make the pavements wider, add some trees, add a bit of planting, add some seating, parklets, things like that. But those are changes that you can only realistically make after you've made the first step, which is removing the through traffic from the street. Now, the section we're coming up to needs a bit of a lick of paint. Literally, actually, there's just supposed to be a little cycle path on the pavement here, but it's basically just faded away, so it needs repainting. We then use the cycle crossing and we join this other painted cycle track, which gets us over the railway line. And that's the Elizabeth line and the Great Eastern Main Line, to be exact. Now, I was just talking about how you might re-engineer the streetscape once you've removed through traffic, and I think this here around this corner is a nice example. That's what Newham Council have done in this low traffic neighbourhood. It's Newham Atherton LTN, and there around that filter they'd removed some of the parking, they've added a lot of planting, and just put in a much nicer surface, and the street looked lovely around there. Obviously they haven't done it across the whole wide area. Would be lovely to see more of that, but I thought that little flash there, which I've also used as the title card of the video, is kind of a nice example of what you can do to a street just to humanise it a little bit more. Of course, those changes aren't necessary to make a place nice to ride a bike in. The low traffic is low traffic whether or not there's nice planting by the roads or not. But the point is that schemes like that can have much wider benefits beyond just for people who want to ride a bike down them. Now, the main section of this route that we've just been doing has mostly been on quiet back streets in a low traffic neighbourhood or several low traffic neighbourhoods. That's going to change now. We're going to go on to a proper protected cycle lane running down a main road. First, we cut down this shared path here alongside Stratford Morrison's, and then we use the Toucan crossing to get over the side road. But once you're on the other side, you'll find yourself in a protected cycle lane. I think it's fair to say that Newham Council has done a pretty good job of putting protected cycle lanes around Stratford town centre. There's actually a big loop of protected lanes right around the Stratford centre and around the station, and they're actually building that network out in all new directions, including connecting out to Romford Road, and it already goes into the City of London via Cycleway 2 as well, which I've used in lots of videos. This one via Great Eastern Road is pretty good, nice and wide, bi-directional, and it's going to drop us right in front of the station and the Stratford centre, which is where I consider the centre of Stratford to be. As well as Romford Road and of course Cycleway 2 into the city, Newham is also planning to build protected lanes on Leighton Road up north, so you'll be able to get out of Stratford town centre on protected cycle lanes in all three of the main directions that it's possible to leave on, which I think is excellent. Newham, I think, is genuinely a really underrated borough when it comes to cycling. People don't talk about how good it is enough, and I've been really impressed with a lot of the schemes that they've consulted on, especially in the last couple of years. And yeah, to be fair, a lot of the stuff they've already built is pretty good as well. But anyway, we've made it. If you look at the map there, you can see that that's a fairly direct route. It only took us about 35 minutes, which is just slightly longer than getting the central line. Once you include walking to the station, getting on the train, waiting for the train, that sort of stuff, that generally takes about half an hour. If you enjoyed the video, do make sure that you hit the like button. Let me know in the comments what you think. And thanks again to everyone on the Patreon who helps keep the channel going. I really appreciate it, and if anyone else is feeling generous and would like to contribute too, you can find a link in the description below the video. Let me know if you have any requests in the comments, and I will see you all again next time. Goodbye.